Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy whatever day you're watching, listening to this. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to check into the Maximize Monday podcast. As you can see, a new guest with me this week. I have Brooke joining me. She is a fellow recruiter. So, as you all know, if you've watched, you've listened, I like to have as many people from the recruitment industry join me to kind of give their perspective on how they go about creating a positive candidate experience. The job market right now, as I'm sure Brooke can attest to, is still pretty crazy. I don't know that we'll see any type of end to that. So, I'd like to bring on people to share advice, share insight for job seekers that are just kind of looking for some guidance along the way because there's no one size fits all to job searching. So take what you like from what we have to say and kind of form your own path. But Brooke, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you, Matthew. I really love the work that you've been doing in the podcast. I've been listening for a while, so I love what you're doing out in the space.
I appreciate that. And I'm glad you could join just because recruiting is one of those professions that, there's never like a clear path. A lot of people stumble their way into it. A lot of people, didn't know they wanted to be in recruitment and then they found it and they love it and they stay for, a long time. So I always like to kind of start off with that question just because the journey is so different from everyone. So what did that look like for you? How did you kind of get your introduction to the recruitment industry and what's kept you in it all these years now?
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I don't know anyone that literally came out of college and said, I want to be a recruiter. We all seem to fall into it. I actually have a psychology degree, which maybe I use that more than
Yeah.
anything. But I went to UGA, so I was in Athens, Georgia, and I was bartending. So I probably used my psychology degree a lot during that.
Or,
But, I was like, okay, I need to move on, get a real job. And I moved to Atlanta from there. And found a job with a legal recruiting firm. They were looking for people, just like me, straight out of college that they could mold and train. And I cut my teeth on cold calling and cold calling and cold calling. And I probably, we were recruiting attorneys. And I found that it was an easy job. Actually, I'll take that back. Cold calling is hard. That's a hard job. It is not for the faint of heart. But I challenged myself on a daily basis, and it was a role where we had a certain number of people we had to talk to every day, and I found that I didn't care about beating anyone else. I just wanted to meet my own goals every day. So it was nice to have that challenge. But I continued in agency work for a while and eventually moved into a corporate in-house talent acquisition role. And I love that there's something new every day. I mean, I'm an extrovert. I love to talk to people, so there's never a lack of people to talk to in recruiting. So that's certainly always a big driver. But I just love hearing other people's stories. And of course, at the end of the day, the best part of it is being able to make a job offer to someone and help them find their dream job.
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you said that cold calling it, the concept of it does sound very easy, the smile and dial portion of the
Right.
job, but it is an overwhelming thing to get over, especially when you start. And I started agency recruiting where there were
Mhm.
set numbers of calls that you had to make every day. So that easy and difficult at the same time.
Right, right. And
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. And yeah, maybe this is on me. I need to speak to more, entry level recruiters. Is that even a thing anymore? With, obviously there's so much online and, LinkedIn connections. Um, I'd have to get involved with someone who's doing that right now.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of how things have changed over these last few years for sure. A lot more focus on like social media and stuff.
Right.
I've found, especially in like the professional space too. So would be a good thing to compare to. So as most people know, in terms of working with recruiters, whether you're on the candidate side of things, whether you're a client working with a recruiter to find candidates, that candidate experience is kind of the priority for most people in the recruitment industry, getting an understanding of well what the job seeker is looking for, what the candidate and what the client are looking for as well. So when it comes to your process, what are some of the steps that you take to ensure that you're checking the right boxes for start with the candidate side of things, because every candidate's experience, every job search is so different. So how do you try to ensure that the position they're applying to, the position that you're working with them on is the right fit for them?
Yeah. And it is. That's obviously one of the most important things. And I will say, I have been job seeking this past year. So it's been, I think probably will make me a better recruiter
Mhm.
once I'm working back full time. I have some contract stuff right now, but because I see what it's like on the other side. And I'm glad to say a lot of the things that I do are awesome. So I was like, okay, at least I know that I'm doing A, B, and C, but it's proactive communication to start with. I love to make sure candidates know what to expect in the interview process, what to expect, when I get on the phone with them as a recruiter doing a pre-screen. I think I got it down to a science where I knew how to manage the recruiting call, to ask everything I needed to ask. And it was 30 minutes or 45 or what have you, and left enough time for questions at the end. But making sure that they know, I want to tell you everything I can about this company, about this role, where you would fit into the entire organization, the expectations of this position, what success looks like. I I was always proud of myself when at the end of the conversation, a candidate would say, would ask, "Do you have any questions?" And they were like, "I think you told me everything," And it's just making. I like things to come to me clear, and so I want to make sure that is it Brene Brown, clear is kind. And so that's always my mantra. And certainly, we struggle, I think, sometimes as a community to follow up. And it's so many times just human error. And so using the systems that you have, using the automation tools that you have, because we do, especially right now, you have thousands of candidates that are just waiting and waiting and waiting to hear something. And there's no way a human recruiter can keep up with all of that. So just using those systems is very important so that you can always close the loop with candidates in whatever way needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great point that I think gets overlooked so often is just that all the different tools at your disposal and people feel like they have to choose one or the other. Like use what you can. There's no sense in limiting yourself with that for
And I have a piece of paper also
sure.
beside my desk at all times. I was infamous. I would print out my calendar every day and, on the blank space, like you've got to have a to-do list. And these are the people you talked to yesterday. And did you get back with them? And, follow up Friday, make sure you've gone back and,
Yeah.
look at everyone that interviewed that week. And did I do the right thing by them?
Mm.
It's 15 minutes at the end of your day every day.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. I was a
Easier said than done some days, but
yeah. Always have to account for the fires that need to get put out too, for
right,
sure.
for sure.
For sure. So, as your career has progressed, you've taken on different responsibilities with different companies. That you mentioned that you started in legal recruiting. I think that's one of the things that gets lost on a lot of people. You just hear, recruitment. You think you can recruit for anything, any position, any job, and a lot of people don't know that there's, specializations that can go into that too. So that can kind of be a frustrating part of the candidate experience as well. But all that to say, how did you figure out, what you were wanting to prioritize as you took on these new roles? How did you try to challenge yourself to learn new industries, learn new job responsibilities, to go from recruiting for the legal field to then, maybe later on exploring, I don't know, tech or healthcare. A lot of people get overwhelmed with that process. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, thank you. And I did legal recruiting maybe 7 or 8 years, and I moved around within that agency with, I moved to having my own book of business versus just the candidate side. And then I moved into managing their paralegals and some contract closing attorneys just but at some point I had that thought. I was like, I know there's more than just legal recruiting, and I really wanted to explore those other options. So I actually moved into an RPO, or recruiting process outsourcing company, that worked with hundreds of different clients. So we worked in retail. We recruited from the Home Depot for their managers, again, learning cold calling and researching and those things. But they had another side of their business that one day I could be working for a financial services company. The next day I was working for like a warehouse logistics company. So just a lot of different, being able to trust myself that I could learn about a new company, a new industry in 30 minutes because I was billing my time. I had to jump right in.
Mhm.
So that I think gave me the confidence to know I can't recruit for anything, but I can be very diverse. And I moved into a corporate recruiting space after that. Well, actually, within that company, I became their corporate recruiter and then moved to engineering.
Mhm.
And that was not a conscious decision, but I was recruited by an HR leader that I had met that just we really connected. And again, there you're recruiting for everything, but it was, very engineering basis. I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm not an IT recruiter. I'm not a tech recruiter. I try and I feel like I'm pretty smart, but then I try to have these conversations. I'm like, this is not me. So
Yeah.
I've always hired people to do that for me. And, their ability to understand so many different languages from an IT standpoint just astonishes me. So
Yeah.
I'm not your girl for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a whole different animal for sure. I've dabbled in that on occasion, and there's a very significant difference in terms of tech
Yeah.
recruiting with some of the other stuff that you'll work on.
So you do have to decide, like, I can be an expert in a lot of things, but not everything. And it's okay to say that out loud, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people are connected with you, follow you, they probably visit your page and saw that you're founder and primary talent advisor for Restoration Talent Solutions. So what did that process look like? I know you mentioned, doing some contract stuff too. And these are things I think people in the recruitment industry consider, but there's hesitation around that, going into business for yourself, being your own boss, starting your own type of firm where you can focus on specific talent exploration that you want to do. So walk me through that process. It's not an easy journey. So what did it look like for you to make that decision to take on some of these projects, some of these contracts that you're doing?
Yeah. And I'll be open and honest with you here. I probably would not have done it had I not been laid off the year before.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was always right here in the back of my mind, like I could just do this, I could just do this, but why would you do that if you're perfectly safe in your full-time job? That takes a whole different level of bravery and entrepreneurism to do that. And I know a lot of people who have done it. And I was in a job search last year and it was every day just felt futile. There are not a lot of director and VP of talent acquisition roles. And there are a ton of people on the market that look just like me on paper, so to speak. Um, so it was literally one weekend, and I, gotten second runner up in a couple of roles that I was interviewing for. And I looked at my husband, and I was like, why am I not just doing my own thing? And he was like, I don't know. I've been waiting on you to do this for, 6 months. And we did. We built my website. We, pulled together the company. It was just a very, fateful weekend that we had nothing going on.
Yeah.
And, I've been learning and learning and, figuring it out. I've never been a business owner, so there's a lot to learn on that end, but I feel so much more in control of my career now. And I know that I can do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
And I might decide to look for to go into a full-time TA role, and that's still on the table. But working for some clients, I'm working, I've gotten business through people that I know
Mhm.
that, you kind of have that immediate trust when you've worked with someone before.
Yeah.
That's my business development plan is just reaching out to all of my mini ambassadors out in the world. I've placed thousands of people and hopefully they remember me. They would recommend me for that type of, fractional recruiting work. Um, I'm considering, I've been giving away thousands of free hours of career coaching this year. And not that I ever want to take advantage of that, but I think I have a lot of value to add in that space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned this earlier that there's a lot of people that are looking for, their next opportunity in talent acquisition. And within talent acquisition, there's thousands of recruiters. So what makes you stand out? Branding plays such a large part in,
Yeah.
who you are as a recruiter. And I'm sure that's even more important for you now since you're representing yourself in talent acquisition and representing the company too. So how important has that been? How did you try to utilize company messaging as part of your process now since you have full ownership over what that
Yeah.
company messaging is?
I'm probably still figuring that out. I'll be honest with you on that. And I did spend a lot of time, even just coming up with a name, like what is it about me specifically, that makes me better, not better, but different, more unique. What's my special sauce, secret sauce, if you will. Um, so, the I've worked with a lot of other or met a lot of different recruiters this year, and we talk so much about we've always been exceptional at branding the companies that we work for. Our job is working on their brand and making sure people want to work for their company. So I hadn't done much of that on my own.
Hmm.
So I really have spent this past year trying to figure that out. I know, and one of the greatest compliments someone ever gave me or a leader gave me, she was like, "You bring the calm when everyone's chaotic, no one knows what's happening. You're like, okay." And it's that clear word again, this is what we're going to do. I know this stinks. I know we're in a bad spot, but this is how we're going to fix it. And I'm trying to continue to build on that brand. I probably should hire an official marketing company to help me with that. But definitely just, knowing that I can bring new procedures, new processes, things like that to the table.
Yeah, definitely. So
That's
you and
all I can advise. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I,
Like,
totally fine.
always think about your own brand from day one when you enter a job and enter your career. Like, certainly you're always working for your company, but what is it about you? That is such a great question that I didn't ask myself for a long time.
Definitely, definitely. So prior to the recording here, you and I were kind of chatting, and you mentioned the post that you had a few weeks back that you and I had started talking a little bit more after that, and some of the aspects of the job search that just is frustrating for the job seekers, frustrating at times for the recruiters too. So I always like to kind of go over this because there are going to be some uncontrollable aspects of your job as a recruiter, things that you have zero way of impacting in the recruiting process, especially when it comes to getting timely responses. You're working with hiring managers who have 8 to 10 different projects on their plate anyway. So at times this job search, while it's priority number one for the job seeker and it's up there in priority for the recruiter, sometimes it dips down to the fifth, sixth most important thing that a
Right.
hiring manager
Right.
on. So how do you try to approach those situations? Because obviously you don't want to go in and just be like, oh, well, I haven't heard back from the hiring manager and kind of throw them under the bus. But you also want to be cognizant of the frustration that got job seekers going through. So how do you approach those situations?
Yeah. Again, going back to that word, proactive communication, from, starting, hopefully every job is starting with some kind of kickoff call, intake call with the hiring manager. And immediately I schedule, depending on the urgency, either a weekly call, a bi-weekly call with them. Even if it's 15 minutes, I know that time's on our calendar. And then it's my responsibility, I feel, before the call to have an agenda and, share it or not share it, but to say, okay, these are the three people I haven't heard about. So those are the first people we need to hit on. What's going on in your world? Are we still on track? So just going through all of those updates and you might get pushback from that. I don't even have 15 minutes to give you, and you always want to be, of course, cognizant of that and respectful of their time, which is why us prepping and being ready with all of those questions, I've talked to 10 people, everyone's below or everyone's above the salary that you're looking at. I think we need to either reframe the candidate that we're looking for or look at the salary. So always being that advisor. We never want to be order takers, right? So making sure you know the questions to ask them. Um, my team, I've had, people reporting into me and they know I very rarely get upset with anyone on my team unless I get a call from a hiring manager that says, Matthew hasn't responded to me or Matthew hasn't sent me anyone. And it's just proactive, 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 over communicating.
Yeah. So the other thing I see most people venting about in terms of the frustration is the feedback portion. You go through these interview processes. Sometimes you just get the canned email, thanks, but we're moving in a different direction. Sometimes you get just kind of the basic feedback of we found people that have more
Right.
direct experience, and obviously that's not going to be helpful to many people when it comes to, well, how do I do better the next time if you're just getting that. But feedback can be tricky sometimes because sometimes it's just nothing that really you can work on. It's just one of those things. So how do you try to approach that with the candidates that you're working in, delivering feedback to help them on that next job application that they do, but at the same time be cognizant of that there's might be some feedback that they get that isn't beneficial for them.
Right. I mean, this is always not a debate, but it's hard because no one likes to give bad news,
Mhm.
but it's the most important thing we can do for candidates. And like I've said, I've been on the other side now, and I don't. You certainly, as a candidate, have to take it and do something with it. If you get good feedback, that's like a gold. But
Right.
I mean, I haven't always done this well. I will be upfront with you about that. But in a perfect world, we're having an interview process. There's a debrief session with the people who interview, and the recruiter sits in on that. So then you're able to hear what went into the conversation. Why did this person do better? What did this person completely bomb, or was it, whatever? And being able to have enough discernment to pull that into some actionable, really constructive feedback for the candidate. If anyone, comes in and does, well, maybe Teams interviews now, but face-to-face interviews, I've always put on my team, like that's a phone call.
Mhm.
That person deserves the beauty of our time
Yeah.
um, to tell them, you did great on A, B, and C. They didn't think you were ready for X, Y, and Z, what have you. So it's important to be in the feedback loop
Mhm.
is but we don't always get that as recruiters. I am always lucky to have a good applicant tracking system where people leave their notes and leave their feedback, so then you can go in and read it. I haven't always had that. So sometimes it does feel like we're pulling teeth
Right.
to get some feedback. And I know recruiters sometimes are scared to give feedback because candidates don't respond well sometimes. How could you say that I don't do that? And I guess we just have to have thicker skin and have a better, more kind way to deliver it.
Definitely.
You can't handle how or you can't what's the word I'm looking for? Manage how someone responds to you. You just have to know that you're doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So we've talked about the important aspects of succeeding in recruitment. And the last one I wanted to touch on is one of the key pieces because it's networking. And this comes from all angles, just as to find the right candidates. If you're trying to find the right clients that you're going to support, networking is key. You alluded to it earlier, trying to, hope that you're getting those messages from people that you've supported in the past that are going to mention you if the opportunities arise for contracts for new roles, things like that. So it's always been kind of the most overwhelming part for people I see when they're starting out in their job search is how do I know I'm networking with the right people? So for you, not just as someone in recruitment, but also someone who runs their own company, pursues these contracts, how have you tried to make sure that you're strategizing how you build your network and making it collaborative and not just a one-sided thing?
Right. Um, Strategy could be a strong word, but this is what I've done this year. From if you can tell, I'm an extrovert if I haven't said that already. So I have found as many in-person networking groups as I can to that I can still manage my time. It's not overwhelming. And I try to keep a good mix of job seeker networking groups and, people who are just want to network. There's a LinkedIn group called LinkedIn Atlanta. I'm in the North Atlanta area. That is a great mix of people, some job seekers, some consultants looking for work, and some just people who like to meet other folks and network. So keep a good mix of those types of meetings. There's a couple of job seeker calls that I get on, but anytime I leave a meeting, I typically have signed up 5 people that I'll send my Calendly with that I'm like, let's just talk, let's just swap stories. So that's really what it's all about, making sure that you meet people, but then build on those relationships, set some additional calls for a couple of months. And it's not just, oh, let me go look through your contacts and you introduce me to all the right people, but how can I help you? I mean, that's the number one word is how can I help you? And like I said, I've done thousands of hours of just, I don't want to even say career coaching on my end, but just what's happening with you? How can I help you? Do you know about this call? And just sharing our stories is really the most important way.
Yeah.
I'm working on my business development networking. That is something I am trying to strategize. I'm officially going to my first like Chamber of Commerce meeting next week, and
Mhm.
Atlanta has some great tech villages, so more to come on how that works out.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear. So, last question I have for you is the question everyone who joins me gets, and it's the advice portion. And, we've talked throughout and you've given some key pieces of advice, but I always like to kind of ask if there's anything specifically in terms of advice that you received along the way. I know I mentioned earlier, if, to new recruiters trying to join this or just in general to job seekers, what is it if people come to you, Brooke, what advice can you give me to going through this job search to getting into recruitment? What's usually that piece that you find yourself giving more often than not?
Yeah. Um, Self-reflection is such a beautiful gift. And I'm a big fan of using your strengths, building on your strengths, but don't ever ignore the feedback that you get about weaknesses. Always take it with a grain of salt because you never know, kind of the intent of the person that it's coming from. But how can you use that and either turn it into a strength or make some improvements in your life? And I think I said earlier, like, and we're not all like Instagram influencers. We're not branding experts, but you ask the question like what makes you special and what makes you unique that's different from the person standing next to you who could do the same job. And I think that self-reflection is really important for all of us. And just keep building on that
Yeah,
and find people that you have fun with.
right.
We've all been in those jobs when you're like, you are not my people. We can do this job, but it makes such a big difference. I know not everyone has that privilege, but I've had one of my leaders 3 times now, and I would work with her anywhere because we have so much fun and do such good work together.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Brooke, I'm so happy that you were able to take some time to do this with me. I'm very appreciative for the insight that
Thank
you
you so much.
share. If you're not connected with following Brooke, make sure you do that. I have her tagged in the LinkedIn post. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next Monday.
Thank you, Matthew.